I remember it like it was yesterday. It was March 17th, 2020. I got the call to go back to work and it just did not feel right. And I remember calling you at lunch that day and being like, I can't do this. I think I've made up my mind. It's time for me to spread my wings and take the big leap. And then when we started seeing results, it happened really fast. I mean, we went from 15 clients to about 165 clients in 18 months. One of the things we still find ourselves talking about is what's the next bottleneck. In order to get where you want to be, you have to do things you don't necessarily want to do or maybe aren't perfect. I'm working 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. every night. I'm selling, picking up after, I'm running the sessions.
People like the idea of being an entrepreneur or owning their own business, but the sacrifice of how much work it actually takes is not for everybody.
Yeah.
And so I think you have to decide, am I willing to work for it or not?
Welcome to the Higher Form podcast, where high performance meets real life. We talk about how to grow with intention, lead with clarity, and feel strong in every season. Today's episode, we're going to talk about building a business. My name is Nick.
I'm Britni.
And we're going to be sharing our experience diving in headfirst into building a business in the fitness industry.
And the roller coaster that's come with it.
100%. It's been a ride, to say the least. We have officially been business owners. It's a loaded question, actually, how long we've been business owners. And I think this is something we'll...
Yeah, every time people ask, like, well, how long have you guys been in business? We're like, well...
when did I start my LLC or when did I start an actual business? Because those feel like two different timelines.
Yeah.
2020.
2020 is when we started being self-employed, working for ourselves.
Yeah, we were both, I think we shared this in previous episodes, we were both working for different fitness and health businesses.
Yeah.
I was working at a big box gym. I'd been there for 7 years. I was in a regional-ish management role. And you were?
At a medically supervised private practice nutrition program.
Yep.
Helping clients that way. Yeah.
And the pandemic, like many people, forced us down a path that we were not really sure about what was going to happen. Gyms had gotten shut down. I remember it was like it was yesterday. It was March 17th, 2020.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's certain moments in life, big moments in U.S. history. I think of 9/11. I don't need to go down a morbid rabbit hole, but I think you remember where you were at.
Yeah,
you know
everybody knows exactly. I was in my 4th grade class, Mrs. Wallace, shout out.
To Mrs. Wallace.
And they turned the TV on and we went outside. And
I didn't even know what the World Trade Center was.
Yeah, no, I was in 4th grade.
Yeah,
so.
Fast forward to 2020. Remember that kind of like experience of thinking we're going to be off for 2 weeks and we'll be back in the gym. I think we tried to like do a bunch of house projects. Thank God it took longer than 2 weeks because we tried to redo our cabinets and it took us like a month to figure it out.
Yeah.
Even though
don't start kitchen projects by yourself unless you're ready for
the
undertaking.
Yeah, for sure. We figured it out. In the meantime, spent about like 45 to 60 days at home furloughed. You were still working remotely.
Yeah. We were just like virtual. We just went virtual for a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then I'd just spent a lot of time. We went on a lot of walks, a lot of thinking, a lot of introspection.
Yeah.
A lot of opportunities to kind of reflect on where we wanted to go.
And those are all like pivotal moments in life when those things happen. It makes you sit back, reflect, what are we doing? I was just having this conversation with someone the other day about, we always talk about this when we go on vacation. Every time you come back, you just are like, okay, where do we need to adjust with our routine? What needs changing? And so I think the pandemic was obviously a big opportunity for like, okay, what's going on in my life? What do I like? What do I don't like? Where do we want to go from here? Because this is the time for change if we're going to change. So take advantage of it.
Yeah, and I think we'd always kind of talked about this dreamy idea of you have a nutrition background and I have a fitness background and we can have the most aligned business possible, but I don't know that it ever would have happened. I don't know. It's hard to say it never would have happened, but
I don't know.
We weren't predicting a timeline or planning for when it was going to change. I know we talked about it and we'll share some funny iterations of what happened before the business came to what it is today. You sit at home and you think, you process, and finally I got the call to go back to work and it just did not feel right. I spent so much time thinking about what a new direction or a new path would look like that I went back for a day. And I remember calling you at lunch that day and being like, I can't do this. I think I've made up my mind. It's time for me to spread my wings and take the big leap,
Yeah, for sure.
Thankfully, your job gave us some stability during that time because that was certainly a big unknown transition.
Yeah, it gave us the opportunity to take the leap and be working on that while we had at least one steady income at the time.
Yeah, I think so many times we'll come back to this concept of difficulty breeds opportunity in this conversation because that's been the nature of our business. We've had so many ups and downs and challenges that in the moment felt like the end of the world. And we're like, oh shit, what are we going to do about this? And then in hindsight, we're like, wow, that worked out really well. I'm
And
glad that happened, you know?
and I'm sure a lot of other small business owners could say the same thing, right? I think anybody who's a small business owner working for themselves, trying to do something bigger than themselves is going to go through the ups and downs of what it means to build from the ground up.
Yeah, built from
Yeah.
scratch.
Yeah.
And started our LLC in 2020. It was June 1st of 2020. I remember going to the bank, setting up my business bank account.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to your dad, Papa Reed, giving us a chance to kind of like follow in some of his entrepreneurial footsteps.
Yeah, my dad's been an entrepreneur basically his whole adult life.
Yeah.
And so he's a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
right?
He gave us a good influence. He was in our ear, and it was just like,
Yeah.
really me. He's like, you want to sit here and wait, or you want to go out and do it? And
Yeah,
I'm
I
not,
think he gave us that little nudge to pull the trigger and just take action.
yeah.
And I think you have to have people in your corner who are going to help you get out of your comfort zone and just be like, are you going to be about it? Or
Yeah.
are
You're
you
going
just
to
going
talk about it or be
yeah,
about
you're
it.
going to talk about it or are you going to be about it?
Yeah. Another shout out to him. I mean, your parents, our whole family are a really close knit circle of family and support crew and close
Yeah.
friends. We have a small circle naturally, but they,
Yeah.
especially your dad's paid a lot of dues to help us get off the ground.
Yeah.
He came and helped us re-pour the driveway. We flipped the garage into a garage gym. So you're talking 1980s house. The paneling in there was ugly as hell. It was all brown and
Yeah, it was, I mean, it was a standard 1980s
yeah.
garage that had never been
Yeah.
done anything to it.
So we gutted it. We redid the driveway. We poured a sidewalk around the side. We put a hole in the side of the garage,
Or a new
a
door.
hole so we could put a door.
Yeah.
Went pandemic fitness equipment shopping, which was quite the experience because everybody was buying fitness equipment then.
Yeah, it was all super back ordered and delayed.
Yeah, I think it took 9 weeks to get something. And in today's
Yeah.
economy, I feel like if I order it, I expect it in the next 48
I
hours.
know, right?
Our stuff came in. Blessed to have had a community of people that we'd built that organically had a bunch of clients fall in my lap. I think there were a lot of different types of people around the pandemic with fitness, right? I'm never going to a gym. I'm going to mask up and never step out in public again, or I want that. And I think I had some people that were like, I can't stop training. This is too much of an important part of my life. What are you going to do? And we're like, all right, I'll go train you at your house. I'll go to the park after things slowly started opening up. I was at like 3 different gyms, just
Yeah.
paying
Shared spaces
shared
where
space fees.
other
and-
trainers had, you
yeah.
know, shared fees and stuff too.
But yeah, it
So
was a journey.
it started off with, I think let's backtrack for
Yeah.
a second. It started off, you opened the bank account and it was just you servicing one-on-one personal training
Yeah.
sessions. That's how we got it going,
Yep.
right? That was step one.
Yep.
Training out of the garage, going to a couple people's houses, eventually moving your way into a couple of the shared spaces.
Yeah, that happened toward the end of 2020. Found out at the end of 2020 that you were pregnant with our first child.
Yeah.
So that was kind of an eye opener. Like this training in the garage under the baby room isn't going to be a sustainable way long term.
Yeah.
2021 sourced out a space in Overland Park that was a shared gym facility that was for a lot of like sports performance stuff, and had a couple of other spots that I would drive to and drop into. Shout out to anybody who hooked me up along the way.
Yeah.
Did that and then came across some like consulting opportunities and right before Julian was born. And it's just crazy how the world works. I had a former coworker who reached out to me about a gym in North Kansas City that needed some help, and they were looking for management support. So did some contract consulting, had a chance to step in and learn what the fitness industry was like outside of Lifetime and big box corporate experiences.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were a privately owned gym, still very successful today, and had kind of been feeling the woes of the pandemic impact. And we stepped in there and got a chance to help them rebuild some systems and get some more team members on board. And
Yeah.
I was doing that kind of like part-time consulting, part-time training. Yeah.
Yep.
You were still at the old spot. And then I guess,
I was there until I had our first.
Yep.
And then I stayed home for a little bit.
yep,
And you were still doing just kind of training one-on-one,
doing consulting, just kind of like
consulting.
making
You did
ends
that
meet.
for, a little bit.
Until the like spring of 22.
Yeah.
The really defining point was March of 2022. We took a trip to Reno.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to draw the tie-ins back to why we ended
Yeah.
up in Reno,
Well,
Nevada.
we went, I mean, I have an uncle out there and we went skiing and just kind of took a little vacation. And I have a buddy who, when I first got into the industry, Jason, we were trainers together at a gym when I lived out in Reno. And he ended up opening up his own gym. And he's very big into the bodybuilding world and the powerlifting world. And We went there to just get a workout in, kind of check it out. And after we left, we were just like, well, he's doing it. Why don't we do it?
Yeah.
I mean, we're already kind of doing it. Let's just figure out how to do it on a bigger scale. Let's get our own spot. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And so then that kind of sparked our creativity and brainstorming of like, okay, how can we bring this to life? And
Yeah.
so that is when we ended up getting our first into like daycare. So I could be a little bit more involved in helping us build what we wanted to build.
Yeah, right about the time we got him into daycare, we made a significant investment into a mentorship program who taught us marketing. One of the things that I vividly remember when I left to go to my own is some of the skepticism I felt from people that were leaders, managers, coworkers at the place I used to be at was like, you're great at delivering, but can you market and sell? And it's been like, it's something we really struggled with over the first couple of years, and we still are working and learning on. But it's funny because Brittany and I are the type of people who fitness has always been integrated in what we do. And from what we've learned in marketing, you have to learn how to speak to the people that you want to serve.
Yeah,
And it's hard to speak to something that you've never experienced yourself, right?
for sure.
And that's been the biggest gap that we've had to learn is like, how do you create that draw and that desire and that interest in people wanting to come and pay you money? Like, how do you get strangers to pay you money for things that they value? And we knew what we had to deliver. And we knew that, I think we've always known that we can deliver it in a way that's unique, which is what's been, in my opinion, the thing that's made us most successful is being able to deliver fitness and health and nutrition in a unique way. But being able to market and sell that is a different challenge, right?
I think that's the hardest part about trainers in the industry in general is most trainers are educated in the science and the application of helping people and technique and all of that. And to do the sales piece is it's not like we're trained in sales. It doesn't come naturally to most people.
Yep.
And so that's been our hardest lesson is learning how to market and sell
Yeah, I think more
to
than
scale the way
than-
we wanted
yeah.
to scale, right?
And
'Cause
more
to get a
than
few clients here and
marketing,
there,
though.
no big deal. But to fill a business with multiple coaches under you, like you have to have a plan.
For sure. And I keep going back. It's more the marketing, right? Because I got a chance to sell training when I was at Lifetime and I was successful.
You're experienced in the sales part, but it's the marketing in today's day and age of
How do you
get the
stand
word
out in
out?
the crowd?
How do you get the word out about you? How do
Yep.
people find you?
And I think the two, among all the different things out there, if you're not running around showing off six-pack abs or booty pics on social media, it almost takes away from what people's perception of quality looks like because, fitness is one of those things where you automatically assume that if somebody looks a certain way that they can deliver that result.
For sure.
In my experience, it's rarely the case. Finding the person that looks the part, can technically deliver, and can market and sell appropriately is a rare breed.
Yeah.
And once again, the biggest reason we're here is that we've spent a lot of money on learning skills and developing things that we did not have prior to.
Which is not the skills of us training people. It's the
Skills
all
of running
the
and building a business.
skills of running and
Yep.
building a business, the back end stuff that people don't see, that people don't know.
For sure. I think then another big thing that we took away from that, and this is something that kind of has evolved through the whole journey, is there's different aspects of business, right? You think about marketing, acquisition, fulfillment, retention, building teams, having systems, all these different pillars of operating and running a successful business. So learning that framework from other people who have done it before and had repeatedly helped other gym owners and fitness professionals do that was
Yeah.
it was a no-brainer. And then when we started seeing results, it happened really fast. I mean, we went from 15 clients in May of 2022 to about 165 clients in 18 months. So
Yeah.
it happened really fast. And I've heard people say this before, and we truly experienced this. Like, you can almost have more issues growing too fast than you do not growing fast enough, right? It's that dichotomy that you find a lot in
Yeah.
leadership and business and life.
Yeah. It was an eye opener of, oh, wow, we have all these people now. How do we take care of them?
How do we manage this?
How do we
still-
manage them?
How do we still deliver at a high level?
Yeah. And give them the experience that we want them to have.
And then even learn that marketing to get a volume of people is not the same as marketing to get the right people and the right clients and the people you want to serve. We've talked about this before. Not all money is good money, and not all clients are great clients.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, we want to help anybody who wants to live a healthier lifestyle. But we certainly learned who were good for us and who we were not good for.
Yeah, I think that goes for any business, right? You
Yep.
have some clients where you're like, this isn't making sense.
Yeah.
And then there's some that are like, we still have some people today who have been with us since you were in the garage
Yeah.
and since you were in a shared space.
Yeah,
And
we have a few
then,
that have traveled multiple locations, which is
yeah,
really cool.
yeah,
And then you have everybody who's joined along the way.
yeah, absolutely.
But I think the thing was 2022 starting to learn how to sustainably acquire new clients. And that was when we popped the lid off of being able to grow. And one of the things we still find ourselves talking about is what's the next bottleneck, you know? And when you first start, if you don't have a way to sustainably acquire clients, it doesn't matter how good you are if you can't get people in front of you.
Yeah.
And when we figured that out, it was like, okay, I'm working from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. every night. I'm selling.
Hmm.
I'm picking up after. I'm running the sessions. I'm making the phone calls. I'm doing the retention, every aspect of it. But having you on board there, I think those early days, we picked an interesting time to start our family and our business literally at the same time.
Just
So
go all in.
go all in. We were in all the way really quick. I mean, we went from started the LLC in 2020, had our first kid in 21, started scaling the business in 22, signed our first lease in 23. So we
Hmm.
started hiring coaches at the end of 2022. Two of the three coaches we hired that first 6-ish months are still with us and
Yeah.
rock stars on our team now.
Yep.
And it's been cool to see not only the business grow, but the people in the business grow, ourselves included, you know?
Yeah.
But it's been a constant evolution. Anything else from the early days before we had our own space, like we were making a sacrifice of sharing a space with other people to build to a place to be able to build our own. And I think there's a lesson in that. In order to get where you want to be, you have to do things you don't necessarily want to do or maybe aren't perfect.
Or are just placeholders until you're at the point where you
Stepping
can, yeah,
stones. Yeah.
stepping stones to get to the next one brick at a time. Well, this is our first brick. We're in a shared space. Our
Yeah.
second
We're
brick, we've got our own space.
in a little
And
dungeon in the back of a very large building. So
yeah,
it's crazy to look back at those days. And in a lot of ways, it feels like yesterday, but a lot of ways, it feels like it never happened.
it feels like so long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think going back to your thought on we started our family and our business at the same time, we kind of were like, well, we're going to be grinding for a few years. Young babies, young business.
Yeah.
We just knew that this is going to be hard, but we're going to do it because we want the long term from it.
Yeah. If we want to
So,
create and build the life and the impact we want long term, it's going to require us just paying our dues. You
yeah,
know?
yep.
Another thing too is so signing our first lease, that was a hell of a journey, trying to find space in one kind of an interesting real estate market where a gym layouts, it's like you have to have enough space for a legitimate fitness floor. I think that 5,000 square foot ish mark is give or take kind of where we were aiming for.
Yeah.
Took us a minute to figure out one, how to get into a space. And then when we figured out like, all right, cool, this is what a lease looks like. Here's what you should pay attention to. Here's what you don't.
Like a
Here's,
commercial lease
yeah,
compared to like a home. And well, I think part of it was finding the space was hard because there was certain city coding, like you couldn't have a gym in this type of spot. So finding the space in general was a journey,
yeah. So
you know?
narrowing down to a pretty small list and then having to get really creative with the space and the opportunities that we did have because there wasn't a whole lot. And
Yeah.
it feels like every situation where we've made a transition, there was a tight timeline. We were really outgrowing the shared spot we were in. There
Yeah.
was some rumors of transitions there that were going to happen that would have impacted us. And we're like, all right, we got to get out of here quick
We got to get out of here before,
before we're forced.
before we're forced out and then have nowhere to go
Yep.
and lose business,
Yep.
right?
Blessed to have transitioned. I think well over 90% of our clients followed us to the new space. A lot of energy there. All of our coaches came with us at the time and got into that new space. And we signed the lease in like January 1st or 2nd of 23, and then got into the space around like the middle of March. Had a new coach or two start with us around that time frame as well.
Yeah.
Just started to learn how to develop teams and put some basic systems in place and try to figure out how to get where we wanted to be. So many lessons, everything from
So we could go down
fire code to
yeah.
compliance standards to occupancy permits and all of the construction things. And that's a whole probably podcast in
Yeah,
itself.
yeah, that's a whole separate story.
But yeah, spent 2023 having to go through some really hard HR transitions. Some things in our control, some things, circumstances of life dealing you a deck of hand or a card from, you know what I mean? A deck of hands, a card.
Oh my gosh, I have
A
no
hand
idea.
of cards. You know what I'm talking about.
I
You get
know what
cards you
you're
didn't want.
I know what you're trying to say, but I don't know what the quote is.
Yeah,
So
somebody's gonna
sorry
be like,
about
oh
that.
my gosh, dude, pull it
Spit
together.
it out.
But yeah, we were dealt some cards that were not our choice and
Yeah.
had to learn how to navigate difficult situations that were certainly not planned. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then we ended up having another kid in 2023. That
Yes.
was all in the mix there too. So right about the time that we signed the lease there, I remember
We found out
we
we
found out
were
we were pregnant with number
expecting.
two.
Yep. Yep.
And 2024 felt like we hit our peak in performance financially in the business in Q1.
Mm.
But I'll have to say it was honestly one of the most burnout moments I felt because we didn't have the systems in place to make it
Yeah.
sustainable to manage the way we were running business.
Yeah.
We were signing up 25-ish clients a month, but losing 15. And then that level of churn is just exhausting. And it really wasn't impacting people. Like the goal is to get people involved with fitness and help them change their life for more than a short stint of time, right? And we had our
Yeah.
OGs, but just felt like a little bit more of a revolving door than maybe what we would have
Which
wanted
is
long
a
term.
whole nother lesson that we learned is, again, it doesn't matter once you do figure out how to acquire clients.
How do you acquire the right clients the right way?
Well, that, yeah. And how do you keep them from leaving, which
Correct.
is churning clients in and out. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of soul searching in 2024. And then about the middle of the year, we were delivered some news from the city ordinance that we were in that they were going to be acquiring the space that our property was located on, or the property that our space was located on,
Mhm.
and that we had anywhere from 3 months to 3 years to move out. That was a whole journey in itself too.
Yeah, they were doing a construction project on the roads right there, and the city was going to buy out the strip that we were in. And we were like, oh, okay, so what does that mean? And they're like, well, you need to leave.
Yeah.
And then the
The
three,
power of having a team, I think, really came into play here. Shout out to our attorney. He was a big part in helping us gain some peace of mind, but also position ourselves to make sure that we didn't get screwed in the situation.
yeah, and helped us get more clarity and help us figure out timelines with the project. And
Yeah.
I mean, really, we got that information in June, July.
We got it in June, but there was no tentative timeline or date. And I remember it was the first week of August where we sit down in a meeting with a representative that was a legal consultant for the city of Olathe who
Yeah.
was serving as a compliance regulator for the whole situation because it was basically, gosh, it was the Uniform Relocation Assistance Act, I think is what it was called. And we had rights that we were owed to be able to have support to make the transition that we had no choice in
And
making.
once again, we found ourselves in a situation where our circumstance was going to potentially put us out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean, we had people very close to us that were like, it'd be okay if you guys decided that this was the end.
yeah,
You know?
no, and I guess that's not where I was thinking of.
That's what I thought of. Put us out as in like put us out of business.
Put us out as
You know what
when
I
we
mean?
were in a shared space,
Yep.
the, circumstances were going to change and we were going to potentially be out of a space to train.
Yep.
Again,
Yep.
same thing, circumstances with the construction project, them telling us we have to leave, and another situation where we're like, you have to leave.
Yep.
Same kind of thing, different situation.
Yeah, hand forced. I mean, it started with a pandemic. That's the reason we started in the
Yeah,
first
yeah.
place. Hand forced. Hand
Yeah.
forced to get out of the shared space. Hand forced to get out of that last space. And
Now we're here. Let's hope.
let's hope that never happens again.
Let's
Trust me,
hope
we've vetted out as much as we can. That was one of the things that we talked about with the leasing agent here was like, there's no rumors of construction projects around here for the
Yeah.
next decade, right?
Yeah.
When we sign a 10-year
we
lease,
good?
I don't want to go anywhere.
Yeah.
We've moved the business 3 times in the last 3 years. It's funny, one of our coaches had said, we've been in a different gym the last 3 Januaries.
Like every New Year's, we were in a different
And it's nuts.
gym. Yeah.
Really the last 4 because he wasn't around for the one before that where we were at home. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. The evolution of starting from the garage to getting to the current space that we're in now.
Yeah. And once again, a blessing in disguise. We talked to our team about this a lot, and even a lot of clients here, they're like, this ended up being such a great deal for you guys.
That we're now in a better location than where we were previously in terms of just foot traffic and the part of the city that we're in and
Yeah.
accessibility and all of it. Yeah.
The thing too is throughout the different stages of these transitions, we've not only had to deal with the circumstances that we were dealt, but also learn how to step out of it enough to be able to assess where the real constraint in the business is. You're dealt circumstances that you don't expect, and I think it's
Yeah.
easy to get sucked into feeling like a victim in those situations. So whether you're somebody who owns a business or doesn't or ever aspires to, I think these lessons are things that can be taken and applied in any aspect of life where
You're going to get dealt something, a hand that was unforeseen. And what are you going to do?
you hear people say life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% how you respond. And that's something that's been reinforced time and time and time again.
And probably will
And
continue
we'll
to.
we joke about it now because when something happens that we just kind of chuckle like, all right, here we go. This is
Yeah.
the next thing.
Yeah.
It's easy to get frustrated in those situations, but I think that is why business ownership has been so rewarding. We don't talk about this a lot, but the reward is the freedom, and that freedom is not what people may think. That doesn't mean that I don't work. I'm on more now than I ever was before, but it's the freedom to choose what I work on and who I work on it with and who I
Yeah.
serve and how I serve them.
Yeah.
And having the opportunity to create that freedom has been something that has been challenging and has molded us into the people we are. And I think some of the people that I look up to that are big in the entrepreneurship or business space or leadership space talk a lot about how you can have these goals about wanting to be $1 million business or helping 1,000 clients or whatever it is. And it's not even about the outcome. It's about who you become in the process.
Yeah. What kind of person do you want to be? What kind of leader do you want to be?
Yeah. What's required of you to get to that point in your life? In order to achieve those things, who do you have to become?
Because just like
along the way?
anything else, of course, the end goal is the end goal.
Yeah.
But it's about the journey.
Well, it goes back to what we talked about with Atomic Habits. You have outcome, and I talk about this all the time in
Yeah.
consultations with prospective clients, but it's like,
Yeah.
of course you want to lose 30 pounds, but who are you going to become in the process of learning
What's
30
that going to
pounds?
do for
What's that going
you?
to do for you? And it's that identity goal.
Yeah.
And it's the identity of like, I've built this, I've become this version of me through achieving those outcomes to become this identity. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
I think that's such a overlooked aspect of being a business owner.
Yeah.
And not to knock on people who are self-employed, but that's a step to becoming a business owner. We talked earlier about how it's funny
Yeah.
to say, I own my own business. It's awesome. So what do you do? And they're like, well, I do this. Awesome. How big is your team? Well, there's a difference between
Being
being
self-employed
self-employed
and
and owning a business where you have teams and you have to pay paychecks or payroll, and then you have to
yeah.
pay rent, and you got a brick and mortar space, and just the risk associated with it is
Yeah.
different.
The
You know?
overhead and the
That's not a knock on either end of it,
because you've been on both ends
I've
of
been on
it.
both ends of it, and I don't think it's for everybody. I know a lot of people who feel great about working for someone else, and I truly believe
To
as
each their
desirable as
own.
as desirable as it may sound, there's a heavy burden that comes with that too. A lot of really late nights, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of missing putting our kids to bed, a lot of not being able to go to this practice, a lot of having to work 6 days a week, having to work 14-hour days. And I'm not trying to glorify that, but shit, it's part of the process. It's part of the sacrifice that you have to pay
You're
to
building a business,
for
like it
sure.
doesn't happen without the work.
Yep. You hear people talk about you got to pay your dues, you got to put your 10,000 hours in.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part
How
of
many
it
hours
too.
are you at?
I don't know. I did the math a couple years ago on training sessions when we were still in the garage because I was bored. And if you give me a whiteboard, and
Training sessions is different though.
it's all right. There's
Yeah.
two aspects of it.
Okay, so your training hours are going to be definitely
Well over 10,000.
yeah, versus your business owner hours.
Yeah.
or
So you
building
think
a
like
business
50
hours.
hours a week times 50 weeks a year, that'd be 250. So, or 2,500. I don't
Do
know.
not ask me
Don't
math
ask me math.
questions.
2,500. Yeah, that's 2,500 hours, right? So
Okay.
they take 4 to 5 years. I think they say it's 5 years of 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to check me on the math, but
Yeah,
that's all right. I
probably.
appreciate
It's
that.
okay. Or you'll check it when we're
Or I'll
done.
check it when we're done. You got to pay your dues. Another thing too is where we're at now is really just looking at how do we serve our team best so that they can serve our clients best. And then we're at that next point in our journey where I've talked about this for probably the last year or two, where I've even shared it with our staff. What I individually do no longer moves the needle because I can only do so much on my own, right? You hear the quote, alone you go fast, together you go far.
Yeah.
And we're at a point now where our growth that we've made more recently has been from empowering other people in our team to step into higher level roles and take on more ownership in what we do. And shout out to Andre Days, a previous manager of mine. He talked about two things that really resonated with me. One was just having the courage to do things the way that you believe and think they should do, because worst case scenario, you fail and you go back to what you were doing before.
Mm-hmm.
But two, he always talked about the service profit chain. This is something that resonated with me, where as you grow higher in levels of leadership, the better you take care of your direct reports, the more they're going to take care of their direct reports, the more they're going to take care of your clients, depending on
Yeah.
where you're at
Yeah.
in those levels of leadership. And I refer back to books, and we'll always go back to books for frameworks, but John
Yeah.
Maxwell's 5 Levels of Leadership
Yeah.
was another book that played a role in this too. you
Well,
know?
and this is all full circle because you and I are not directly working with many of our clients anymore, right?
Yep.
We have a few sessions and connections, but we're not actively working with all of our members. So the more we can impact our coaches, because they're the ones who are working with our members 90% of the days,
Yeah.
then the better impact we're going to have through them, and then their impact through their clients.
It's a ripple effect.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that that's the thing that is motivating us more now. And honestly, the reason we started Higher Form Podcast is we don't have a lot of opportunities to get our ideologies and our thought processes and the things that we've learned along the way from other people and we want to share. And
Yeah.
it's an opportunity for us to share our voice around what's made us successful, because the only reason we're here is from consuming this type of content from other people
Totally.
who were steps ahead of where we are.
And not only that, it's to share what we've learned and how we got where we are, but also we are working on continuing to elevate at the same time. So what are we doing to continue to elevate in business, in life, relationships, whatever?
And I think it's easy to get stuck in this analysis paralysis mode. I'm super guilty of this because I'm very structure brained. Where do I find an attorney if I need one? Where do I do this? And where being resourceful has been something we've had to really work on, because there is no manual for this. There's no playbook for this. Granted, that's where mentorship came in.
That's exactly why we've invested in mentors who have been where we are or know somebody else who has been where we are, so they can help guide us along the way to make the growth that we're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Altogether, where we're at now, we have a team of 7 coaches, including us, 5 employees that work with us, mostly all full time. And we operate with 100 plus clients. I've helped hundreds of clients over the years.
Yeah.
We have a system in place. We'll talk more about that system in the next episode.
Yeah.
And dive into more of what we do to impact people. But this is intended to be less of a conversation around look at our business and more of, man, we've been through a journey, and maybe it resonates with you. Maybe it's something you're thinking about. Maybe it's something you've done. But the whole purpose of us building this space and this platform was to connect with other like-minded individuals. So if you're somebody who has questions about these things or can relate to it, or maybe you're ahead of where we are, let's connect. Let's figure out a way to come together, because that higher form mindset is a more rare one. And we know that this type of person who's going to take these journeys is a unique breed.
Yeah. How do we get to our highest form, our higher form? Is by connecting with other people in the industry, maybe not even in the industry, maybe in collaborating industries.
Yeah.
Learning, partnering, just like you were saying earlier, if you want to go far, go together.
That's honestly been a hard lesson too. As much as it's like, duh, that makes sense. You can do more with more people. My natural instinct is to go get it done now and do it and get it. You know,
well, also logistically, you're running a business at the same time, so you can only do so much at once. You only have so much time to connect and collaborate with other people.
Surrendering control, man, that has been a challenge too. You know,
that's been a big.
Dan Martell, another good thought leader in the business space, talks about something done 80% by someone else is 100% awesome because it's off your plate.
Yeah.
And that's been a lesson I've really had to learn how to apply so that we can be in a position now where we can really start to empower other people and start to enjoy the fruits of the labor we've put in.
Well, and continue to just find ways to grow the business
through other
from a higher point of view, not just the nitty-gritty day-to-day stuff that's happening, which is what we've built the systems to get to where we are. But now it's like, okay, great. Because we're not working with as many people in sessions and stuff, we're like doing the deeper stuff, the deeper work in the business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think how you build a business can be applied to how you build your life. You want to create something that is meaningful. You want to create something that's impactful, that's fulfilling. Man, take the entrepreneurship journey. And like I said, it's certainly not for everybody. If you have that itch, the worst that's going to happen is you fail and you go back to where you are now. And we had something come up this week, and it was just a simple operational error. These things happen in business where we talked to the team about it, and it's like, all right, well, that obviously is not something we want to happen again, but we win or we learn.
Yeah.
How do we learn from this opportunity and how do we move on? And that's been the nature of what's gotten us where we are, because it hasn't been this beautiful yellow brick road and paved with daisies. And
as nice as that would be.
It would be great. But nobody hands shit to you. You got to go out and work for it. And that's the price you pay to have that level of success.
Yeah. And you have to decide whether that's for you or not, or whether you're willing. I think this is something that we talk about too, is people like the idea of being an entrepreneur or owning their own business, but the sacrifice of how much work it actually takes is not for everybody.
Yeah,
You have to decide, am I willing to work for it or not?
for sure. Well, hey, y'all, we really appreciate it. Next episode, we'll be diving into more of these systems and the science and the principles and theories behind our business. We are fitness people through and through. We eat, sleep, and breathe health, fitness, nutrition. We are not perfect, but we have had many years of putting together practices that consistently and reliably get people results. And we're going to dive into more of what that looks like in the next episode. So appreciate you tuning in. We'll catch you then.